You make it in old fashioned, usually you've got a crystal mixing jug and you have it on the front to make it in front of the customer. It's really, really nice. They like to see you're doing it properly as well. Yeah. And the crystal mixing jugs, it's not just for show, they actually, the spin you get is much better when you're doing it in that, as opposed to some things they have a narrower bottom. Some of the elements that are quite important for when you're making an old fashioned, or the most important elements, is the ice and the whiskey you're using, and the amount of sugar syrup you put in. Buffalo Trace is a very good bourbon to be using for an old fashioned, so this is perfect. So what we're going to do, an old fashioned is usually like 60 to 70 mil, but we're only going to do 50 mil.
Thank you.
The ice, so I'm going to put the spirit in first, and the reason I'm doing that is because the ice is a little wet, and I don't want to over dilute the cocktail before I start stirring it. So we're going to put the ice in last. Make sure when you're making this cocktail that your ice is fresh, because you don't want to over dilute it, for one. And then never put the ice in the glass while you're waiting for the cocktail to go. Ideally, what I would suggest doing is going online to Amazon and buying large ice molds for spheres or squares or whatever it's going to be, just a large block. Because the thing about an old fashioned is once you put it into the glass, this ice just melts far too quickly and it ruins the cocktail very quickly. You want a very big, something that's got a big surface that's going to dilute very slowly and keep the drink chilled. Plus, it looks really nice in the glass. It's usually the most expensive cocktail, and people don't mind paying for it when you have a nice glass. This is a nice glass, and you have nice ice.
Ice for it, yeah.
This, when you have this ice, it just looks a little bit cheap. Yeah. It doesn't look like you want it. So you wouldn't want to drink your old fashioned with ice.
That's like a Jameson on the rocks, like.
Exactly. It's not an old fashioned. So to be honest, I would recommend. And like the silicone molds are so cheap, you get like for a $5, you get like maybe 2 or 3 molds, and just have a few of those silicone molds in your freezer and have them all ready. And then, because the thing about old fashioned is, people who drink them, if you drink one and it's bad, you'll never order one ever again. And if you have large groups of American tourists in, or even people, who want something boozy and old fashioned, and if you make it right, they'll order them all night, and you'll be happy days. That's what you want. So in terms of sugar,
the other night we went through 2 bottles of Buffalo Trace and a bottle of Make as well, because we ran out of Buffalo Trace
from old fashions. There you go. That's the point, yeah. And you obviously, I don't know how much you're using, but I would suggest that not using more than 2.5 mil sugar syrup. Anything more than that, and I think it's just far too sweet. So that's what we're going to put in, 2.5 mil.
And the old way we used to do the
crushed it. Yes, you can do that as well. Like that's an old fashioned, obviously was made with. But this is a consistency. It's always going to be right, and how much the sugar is diluted.
Yeah, because some people actually like the kind of
the crunch
at the end. I prefer it smooth, though.
Yeah, no, I think it's nice to have smooth. Now I slightly over poured, so I'm not even going to pour all that in. I'm going to stop there because I really do think that the sugar is the main thing that can wreck this cocktail. Too much, too sweet. Yeah. Angostura bitters. There we go. And the ice, and then we're going to stir, and that's it. So, mixing jug, and get the stir going.
Making the cocktail at home.
About 20 to 30 seconds, basically. Sorry to interrupt you.
I'd at least do a minute at home.
Yeah.
At least. And stare out the window while I'm stirring at it,
So, put our ice in our glass. We'll pretend that this is a big ball of ice. So you got your big ball of ice in there. And then you take your julep strainer. You had one back there, which is great. So take your julep strainer and you pour into the glass.
The julep strainer is used for the mixing glass, while the hawthorn would be used for the shaker.
Sure, that's exactly it. And the julep strainer used to be for the julep cocktail before they had straws. You'd stick it in there for your julep when you're sitting drinking your mint julep in Florida or wherever it would have been.
Yeah, the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah.